This is Michael Rose, and Michael, thank you again for coming to the party.
Thank you, Dave.
Michael missed last year because he's a brand new daddy, and Michael flabbergasted everybody, but he's 57, has a 1-year-old son now, Alexander, who is going to be part of the future generation and carrying on a lot of his research, I presume.
Mostly paying for your Social Security.
Oh, okay. Right.
Right.
But Michael is one of my favorite people. And I say this sincerely, and it's not just because of his brilliance and what he contributes to the scientific community, and especially aging. Michael's one of the best known, one of the best known researchers. He's an evolutionary biologist, and I think, are there any other evolutionary biologists devoting their careers totally to aging?
No, I'm probably the one who has, in the evolutionary biology research community, we spent most time on aging.
Well, let me tell you what Michael did, and I don't want to steal all his thunder, but this is so impressive. He has, for many, many years, for the last 20-some years, 30 years, how long is it? Well, not 30, but yeah. When did you start doing the Methuselah flies?
I first did an experiment in which I deliberately bred flies to live longer in 1977.
Wow. And he's been doing it ever since. And what he does is he takes the longest lived flies in colonies and he breeds them. He waits till, he keeps them separate, the male and the female.
No.
Oh, you don't?
No. It's a graduate student, medical student experiment, in that they're allowed to have all the sex they like, males and females living together, but the eggs are not kept.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, it's not cruelty to animals then.
It's not.
Yeah,
No. They have great lives.
Oh, so you're kind of
A party of love.
it's not a humanitarian, but like a flyitarian?
Flyitarian.
Yeah,
There we go.
okay.
Flyitarian experiment. Yeah.
But what he does do is he saves the eggs of the ones that are the longest lived, the last ones to breed. The other ones all, die off. And then, because they don't live very long, how long do flies live typically? Fruit flies.
Well, the whole game I've been playing for almost 40 years is getting to live longer and longer.
But normally.
So, a normal fly life cycle, sort of from birth until the experimenter discards them, is normally 14 days.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they couldn't survive longer, but normally they're discarded at 14 days. And my game has basically been to reproduce them instead at later ages than 14 days.
Now, before we get into the extraordinary results Michael had, why fruit flies? Well, one of the answers is already given, because they're very short-lived animals. So you couldn't do these experiments on humans because you'd have to wait, 70, 80 years. So with the fly, you're talking about a month or so. And they are very good models for human longevity. You wouldn't think so, but our genomes are something like, 73% common?
Can I squeeze by you guys?
Please.
Sorry.
Not a problem.
Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
Edit. So the way to think of it is this. So the work of Genesian has shown that of the genes that they found involved in aging in flies, more than 80 to 90% of those are also present in humans.
Even better than I thought.
Yes.
Okay, now, let's tell the camera
Right.
how much longer your flies, the Methuselah fly colonies, live than normal flies.
Well, when I sold the flies to Genesian, they lived at least 3 times longer.
And how about now?
Well, that's something we're working on.
Okay. And it could be as much as 4 times or longer, correct?
Well, the scientifically accurate statement would be to say that the simple thing to say is that lifespan is completely tunable by evolution, which I've been doing since the 1970s. And once you've tuned their lifespans, you can then analyze how they got tuned genomically, genome-wide.
Okay.
So we're now doing that. And the answer is that at hundreds to as many as a few thousand locations, the genomes are retuned.
And we're finding now that by comparing the genomes with the longest lived flies, the colonies, with control groups or normal flies, we're finding the difference in the genes between those two groups.
Over the entire genome.
And that's how they identified the aging genes that are relevant to longevity. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then from that, then they're now, the Genesiant is developing compounds, drugs, and supplements. Drugs primarily, but the supplements that they developed with Brian Fiapontu has doubled the lifespan of the normal flies by looking at the genes.
And it should be said, I'm not involved in that.
Yeah, but your basic work.
It was the flies I created.
Yeah. And now the company is developing drugs based on the genes, trying to figure out what, that's Penn State victory song today.
Yeah, they won, and that's
Penn
why
State
it's
won,
appropriate.
But we're finding that they're able to take those genes and introduce compounds to them on things called gene chips and so forth, and figure out what compounds express those genes, turn them into drugs, and one of these days, subject to regulatory approval, we're going to be having very effective drugs that can extend lives. Is that a good assessment? And maybe treat and cure a lot of diseases like Alzheimer's and so forth.
I would agree with the disease part.
Well, you're too conservative, but
Well, no, actually, see, I think there's a much faster solution to the aging problem.
and what would that be?
And that would be changing diet and lifestyle.
Okay, that is something that's very interesting and something that I started based on Michael's influence and education to me. I started about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
And-
in this room,
Yeah, in
June
this
of
very room, yeah.
2010.
Yeah. And you want to just spend 30 seconds, a minute on that?
Well, basically, we are well adapted to an agricultural diet and lifestyle when we're young. But because natural selection has not adapted us to agricultural foods at later ages, you're better off switching to earlier diets and lifestyles as you get older. So that if you want to actually control and even arrest your aging, you should basically go backward in evolutionary time as you go forward in chronological time.
And we're talking about what a lot of people call a paleo diet with less emphasis on the meat, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And Michael discovered, and some people don't agree with this, I do, not being a scientist, that our rate of aging tends to plateau as we.
I actually didn't discover that. That was discovered by other people. What I did was I developed a scientific explanation for it.
Perfect.
That's what I did.
So essentially what the paleo diet does, and you can read about it in Smart, Strong, and Sexy at 100. This is my book, my new book. You can read about that in Appendix B. I have a whole appendix devoted to it. And it's a kind of a how-to on how to do that.
Or you can go to my website, Michael Rose 55, and read about it there.
And in much more detail, by the way, and much better, it's much better thought out. And much more scientific.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
All right.